Well, Sunak's press conference this afternoon, as we mentioned at the top of the show, was barely half an hour after the now ex-Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, went on social media and demanded similar emergency legislation on this Rwanda plan. Among her allies is the Boris Johnson-backing Conservative Democratic organisation. We're joined now by the CDO's chairman and former Conservative MEP, David Campbell Bannerman. David, thank you. And look, I don't want to speak on behalf of you, but you would represent the side of the party that would presumably welcome Sunak's comments this afternoon.
Well, yes, I do. I think it's a move in the right direction. I think a lot of questions about how fast it can be delivered, if it can be delivered, got through Parliament. The House of Lords can be very obstructive, for example, and this kind of thing. But yes, it's going the right direction. I think it's interesting, your debate there, just there. The focus now is on the ECHR and actually the Human Rights Act. I'd like to see that got rid of. It's back to what Dominic Raab was working on. He wanted to get rid of the Human Rights Act. He wanted a Bill of Rights. And it's a real shame that all got binned by Sunak when he came in, and Raab, of course, had to go. And I think we need to go back to that kind of approach. It was Labour's Human Rights Act, Tony Blair's Human Rights Act, that requires our courts to take into account ECHR judgments. And as a German justice said to me in Strasbourg, she said, I understand it's all about who has the last word. I think that's what it's about.
Look, on the Human Rights Act and ECHR stuff, I'm interested to know if you think you've got the backing of voters on that. When I was speaking to David Gork earlier, the former Justice Secretary, he was talking about the fact that only Russia and Belarus have decided to sort of pull out of the ECHR or not comply with it. And if many voters were aware of that fact, would they want the United Kingdom to do the same?
Well, the European Convention of Human Rights, the actual original document, is written by British lawyers mainly to give the rest of Europe the kind of freedoms and rights that we have traditionally, going back to Magna Carta, etc. So that's not a bad document. The way it's interpreted by, well, there used to be a Russian justice, for example, judging some of these cases. That is the real worry. I think, it's that court overruling, frankly, our Supreme Court, which is meant to be supreme. So even though we've had this judgment today from the Supreme Court, it's not actually supreme when the European Court of Human Rights is kind of above it. I don't think that's a healthy position. So that is very relevant, yes.
What do you make then of the idea that not only are we battling, some people in this country are battling with European courts, but also internally with British courts at the moment? As you mentioned there, the Supreme Court. It sounds even like the current government aren't really, they're accepting the rule of the law, but they want to find creative ways around it.
Yes, as I say, it's the Human Rights Act we have to get rid of. I think even Tony Blair admitted it hasn't worked as they planned. And as I say, that requires our courts to look at it like Article 8. A lot of these challenges over the boat people coming in revolve around the fact that our courts have to take into account all these sorts of human rights measures under those articles. The Human Rights Act actually is more important than leaving the convention, though frankly, that may well come, and I think we may well see that in the manifesto. But I have to say, Sunak has done quite a move today away from the position that was, much softer on the option of leaving the ECHR, and I think that's because of what Suella has done, and good for her for actually, making the case and for being very firm on sorting this out.
In addition to the topic of migrants, do you care about preserving human rights laws in this country? And if so, then what would you suggest other than the Human Rights Act?
Well, we have these rights anyway. As I say, a lot of them are historical. We looked after a lot of refugees during the war, if you remember, a lot of Jewish refugees. There's a great sort of statue at Liverpool Street Station of children we brought in. So it's not like the Human Rights Act invented our human rights. They go right back hundreds of years. And I don't think it's actually very helpful. They've actually been reinterpreted, those rights, in the wrong way. I know it's a complex area. There's the EU has the Charter of Fundamental Human Rights. it's a rights fest. And Suella actually did a fantastic speech on the Refugee Convention, which lies behind this. We're not actually talking with the boat people. They are economic migrants, better life, which you can understand, but they're not like asylum seekers, many of them. And I think that's what's gone horribly wrong, you know. And I think there is a real difficulty here that if we can't actually deal with the numbers, then the public are getting very, very angry at this, and it could lead to trouble.
Well, let's just talk then a moment about the public anger as you see it, because the polling for the Conservative Party in a steady state of decline at the moment, Labour pulling well ahead. Do you think this, I'm not going to call it an about turn today from Sunak, but this kind of confirmation of what he wants to do when it comes to the boats issue, do you think it's going to be enough to get him through to win the election for the Conservatives next year?
Well, I think Sunak is in deep trouble, actually. I mean, you saw the letter yesterday from Suella, which is devastating. And actually, of course, her point is he doesn't actually deliver on his pledges. You know, she did this deal with him, and she'll release more on that. And therefore, there are questions over what he's announced today, I'm afraid. There are letters going in. I mean, it's a secretive process. Not everyone announces it. I think 6 have been announced. You need 53. There could be a leadership challenge, and I think that is what's shaken the government into action today. They didn't quite expect this. They have obviously planned for this downside, and we're seeing the reaction of that today, which is good. But the point is, you know, I think it's a very serious situation for Sunak, and he could well face a challenge.